Okay, now Chris has told you how to grow all your plants, but the next question is, what plants are you gonna grow? So, Chris and Laura Wonderly are gonna talk a little bit about, this is another one of those deals. Okay, but Chris is gonna talk about, you're in Round Valley, what plants grow well in Round Valley, and some tips to make them grow well. So, Chris?
Actually, I'm not gonna do that. Okay, so my name's Chris Wonderly, you don't all know me, I don't know all of you. I've been in the nursery greenhouse business, again, for 40-some years. And so we're kind of on the same track, the two Chris's here. So, yeah, I'm supposed to talk about best plants to grow and general gardening. Okay, well, let's talk about best plants. What does that really mean? Does that mean something that you can get a decent crop here? Does it mean that it's more nutritious than something else? Does it mean that it's something that your family will eat?
All of the above. Yep.
Right? So there's a lot of ways to look at what best means.
Bacon seeds?
Mine didn't break.
Bacon seeds.
Yeah. Disease and insect resistance. Sometimes that's a problem. We sometimes have some serious insect issues, particularly here in Round Valley. I've seen grasshoppers so thick that, you couldn't not step on them. Disease resistance. A lot of you may be familiar with the community gardens we have over in Springerville. And one of the issues we've had there is powdery mildew on the squashes and pumpkins and all those cute things. Well, it's easy enough to solve, but it is an issue. So, yes.
Speak up louder.
Louder? Oh no. Okay, I'll give it a try.
Sit up closer.
Or stand closer.
Sit up closer. That was our
Okay.
cure for that last time.
Also, when you're thinking about best plants, it matters what you're going to do with them. Are you going to do canning? Are you going to turn all your tomatoes into salsa? Exactly what are you going to do? You're going to dry things, and then you got to think about seed saving. So there's a whole lot of issues that go into what is best. Okay, so I haven't answered that question yet, have I? Okay, I'm going to make it even more complicated. Let's talk about our growing conditions here. We have a short growing season. We'll all agree with that, right? Sometimes you don't know when it starts and when it ends. We're usually pretty dry until the monsoons show up on the 4th of July. Low humidity. Windy. Yeah, that can be an issue. Soil type. Now, as Chris said, it's alkaline, we know that. But we have areas that are rocky, we have areas that are really alkaline, we have areas that are sandy. We have areas with a lot of clay. So, again, one plant doesn't fit all when we go to best. Okay? Water availability. Now, here again, if we're talking about an isolation event, about having to survive on what we try to grow, we have to think about whether we can supply everything those plants need in order to grow and provide us some food. So, water availability, if the town of Eager or Springerville or both can't pump water out of their wells, how long is the water gonna last before we run out? You've thought about this,
Depends on how much
Steve?
you got stored.
right?
Not enough.
That's
Okay.
it.
Never enough, right?
Never enough.
Okay, and you've got a well too. Okay, then there's the water quality. And again, we know our water is alkaline to start with. So the soil's alkaline, then we dump water on it. So it gets more alkaline. So you have to keep treating it. Okay, here I go. I'm gonna say the bad word. pH. Little short lesson on pH. It's a measure of how alkaline or acidic either your water or your soil is. It's actually the water in the soil. It's a scale of from 0 to 14, with 7 being neutral in the middle. Okay? It's a logarithmic scale. And for all you mathematicians out there, a logarithm is that 10 to that power, that number power. Okay? And what it's doing is it's measuring the hydroxyl ions in the water. Yeah, I know. The free hydrogen that's floating around in the water. Okay? That's all you need to know about that. But what that means is that if you have, say it takes a cup of, what do you have over here? A cup of something to make it go from, say, 7 to, well, say 8 to 7, okay? If you want it a little more acidic, a little lower, you gotta go 10 times as much to get to that next number, okay? So 10 cups in that same, that's what you need to know about that. Right.
Exponential.
That's enough to confuse things. Okay, so our best plants can match the conditions we have, or you can change the conditions. Okay, there's ways to extend your season with cold frames and buying bigger plants when you do plant your garden. You know, I brought a few plants here. You know, at some point you could plant this one, or you could plant this one. Now, they aren't too much difference in age right now, so a month from now, this one will be twice as big. It just speeds everything along a little bit to have a bigger plant that's more mature, that's maybe even starting to flower, like this one. Okay? Which brings me to another point. If you look at a seed packet label, and it talks about how long it is till you get to the tomato ripens. Right? So it's saying 62 days for something early, like an early girl, or 70-some days for a big boy. You know, those kinds of things. What does that really mean? I don't think most people know what that means. What it means is it's essentially from when that flower's formed and first opens until you have a ripe fruit. It's not from when you plant the seed, right? Okay. So there's a little real misconception there. Oh, it's just a misconception.
It's a ripoff.
No, it's not. No, a 2-before is a ripoff.
You might get it behind or
Okay, so anyhow, so we can extend the season. Cold frames, greenhouses, starting seeds early in the house. Seeds for those tomatoes started in January. Seeds for these tomatoes started when?
March 28th.
See, there's a difference, okay? They're both growing, they're both fine, just later start. Okay, so water availability. How many people have gutters on their houses? It's not a big thing out here, is it? Should be.
Amen.
And how many have water storage? Put your hand up, Steve. So, we are doing that. There are a number of us that are doing that. I have both gutters and 12,000 gallons of storage, so.
Pretty substantial.
Which reminds me, the less it rains, the more storage you need,
Think.
okay? I mean, you gotta go so long before it's gonna rain again, and we know sometimes that's quite a long time. Especially when we don't get any snow either. Okay, okay, so Chris talked a bit about mulching. And it's incredibly important. Again, because our soils are very deficient in organic material. And over all of the soil types that I mentioned before. If it's rocky, if it's clay, if it's sandy, none of it has any organic material in it. Mulch. And again, when water's scarce, mulch is important because it holds moisture. Okay, it doesn't, if it's in sandy soil, it doesn't just all go away. If it's in clayey soil, it doesn't, clayey soils don't allow water to soak in very far. It'll lay on the surface, it'll soak in maybe a little bit, but clay particles are so small that they pack together very tightly, and you don't get that water to drain through very well. So putting in the organic material not only holds the moisture, it breaks up the clay, it allows the moisture to get deeper, and then it doesn't dry out as fast either. Other things you can do, on the market now, there's all sorts of plastic covers that you can put on top of the soil to hold the moisture underneath. I've even found that a light row cover like this, I mean, you can see through this stuff, but it'll hold moisture. And I can throw this on top of these plants and it won't hurt them. And yet it'll hold the moisture.
And blow away.
And blow away. Yeah, you're right about that.
Well, but if it's in a greenhouse, then I only have to water every 30 days. It's that much difference, just that. Okay. So what I have for notes on pH, and changing pH, is if you need to make it more alkaline, which you don't, you buy lime. Which, as Chris said, don't ever do that. By the way, don't ever buy gypsum either. That's sort of a waste of time. If you need to make it more acidic, sulfur works nicely. And it's inexpensive. You can buy 20-pound bags of the stuff. I know you can down the valley. Do you carry it, Chris?
Sure do.
Okay. Works just fine. I'll tell you something else about these tomatoes. Chris mentioned iron chlorosis. If you've got a really alkaline soil, you're going to have iron chlorosis. Just a comment. Iron chlorosis is the lack of chlorophyll in the leaf, in the chloroplast. in the center of every chlorophyll molecule is one iron atom. Same with hemoglobin, by the way. They're very closely related compounds. So, adding a little iron to your water or fertilizer mix greens things up very nicely. And to tell you the truth, I did that with these tomato plants. You can look at it pretty close and you can see that some of the lower leaves are lighter green, the new growth is dark green. That's because when I transplanted it, I used a combination of soil acidifier plus iron.
Great product.
I think I probably bought it from you. Along with the Fertilome root stimulator.
Good stuff.
Mix the two together, it's a killer combination.
It is a good
And I
combination.
talked you into getting the big jug. And you did.
Yep.
And now you've got the 2.5 gallon one. I love it.
I know.
Trying to keep everybody happy.
I bought one. I'm good for a year now. I use that on virtually everything that I transplant. Every time I transplant. Here again, these tomato plants, they started out in a seed flat. They went to a pot pack. They went to a deep 4-inch pot. And they'll end up in gallons. I don't like to put a small plant in a big pot. It doesn't work very well. It causes problems. You end up staying too wet or too dry, or you end up killing plants that way. I'm not doing too bad. Okay. So you can change your pH to what you need it to be. You can fix your soil so your plants will grow in it. You can extend the season. You can block the wind by where you have your garden and what you have for plantings around your garden. You know, you could have a hedge to block the wind on the south or west side.
Those will just blow in the other direction.
Yeah, yeah. But only every other day, right? So you can do some of those things. Again, if you have a cold frame or a greenhouse, then you got them inside and you can protect them a lot better. There's all sorts of structures available on the market now. There's, you know, the plastic tunnels and just all kinds of things. So there are ways to protect your plants from the wind. Also, if you do cover your plants, you can keep out a lot of the insects. Again, if we go back to the grasshoppers in particular, that's a pretty good way to keep them out. Number of other insects, especially the ones that fly around and lay eggs, and then you've got worms, right? So, and again, a row cover like this will do that. You just have to, again, have it in a protected area that it won't blow away. It's become a huge kite.
Do you get wind over here?
No,
Just every other day.
other day?
Texas sucks.
And then there are all sorts of homebrew concoctions you can make for killing insects. Aphids are a tough one, but you can if you're diligent. I've got a book here. I brought a bunch of books. I invite people to come up afterwards and just kind of look through here and you know, if something catches your eye, you know, write it down. This one's from Jerry Baker. He was sort of the guru of home brews, right? Okay. Hey, I'm through the whole first page. I hope to have time for questions here at the end too. Okay, so some gardening basics. Oh, in summation to this part, if you've changed your conditions and you've extended the season and you've done some of these things, it widens the selection of plants that you can grow. Like, you can grow a little longer tomato, you can, that sort of thing. A bigger pumpkin.
At least a small water.
Small watermelon, yeah. Okay. So let's talk about some gardening basics here. So the first one I have is fertilizer. Okay, I'm going to skip the history. Here again, we talked about day length on tomatoes and what that actually means. And I found that a lot of people don't understand what this analysis here. So you got three numbers, right? Nitrogen, phosphorus, potash. And it doesn't, and as Chris was saying, it really doesn't matter if it's an organic fertilizer or it's a chemical fertilizer. Okay? Now, the important thing to know about all this is what those numbers really mean. What they're telling you that fertilizer is going to do for you. Nitrogen causes plants to grow. Okay? There you be. That's pretty much what it does. Okay? The middle number encourages root growth and flowers. I'm still right?
Dead on.
You're shaking your head, that's good. Potash, the book says, for general plant health. So I don't pay too much attention to it. So the first two numbers are the most important ones. So, if you're growing tomatoes, you want that middle number to be higher and the first number to be lower. Because you don't want this gigantic tomato bush with two tomatoes on it. Right? Conversely, if you're growing lettuce or cabbage or spinach, you want lots of nitrogen and not much phosphate. Particularly something like, well, actually all of them. Because if your phosphate's high, then it encourages those plants to flower. And then once they flower, they're not really good for much anymore, other than collecting the seeds later, which you can do too, since we're talking about seed saving. So the trick is grow a good plant, save a couple plants, let them go to seed, and collect the seed. Okay. I refer to seed saving as a second harvest. Just kind of a way to think. Okay, choosing healthy plants. Okay, we go over to the nursery, or we go to True Value, whoever's got plants for sale, and you take a look at them. Okay, if they're supposed to be green, are they green? All right. Do they look like they're growing, or do they look like they're stunted? And they're just, something's not right there. Oftentimes, the something that's not right is that plant's been in that pot too long, and it's pot bound. And the roots are growing around in the pot, and pretty soon there's hardly any soil left, and it's all roots, and you may as well throw it away. Right? Those are the kinds of things that I look for. I'm going to do this because I found last year when I went to the hospital auxiliary meeting and gave a little talk there, and they asked me about transplanting. I watered the rest of them. I left these kind of dry. How do you get that plant out of that pot? You take a hammer to it?
I smack it good on the bottom.
I've seen about that, right? So you have too, right? And it's one of the main reasons why you probably get plants back. It didn't grow, it died. Well, you beat the heck out of it getting it out of the pot. Here's how you do this. Okay. By the way, this is about the way the roots ought to be,
Beautiful,
right?
beautiful.
It's not pot bound. Okay, then the next thing people do, I've seen people do, is like, oh, I gotta loosen up these roots. They go, and they just tear it apart. I go, oh, why'd you do that? You know, we did all this work to get you a nice root system. And on this one, I might come in here and just tease this a little bit if I was gonna put it in a bigger pot. Just enough to get it so it goes in a little different direction, and then plant it in the next size pot. And you don't hurt it. And you give it some more root stimulator. So it'll grow some more roots.
If you get a plant that when you're transplanting it that has flowers, you talked about some of these might be producing flowers.
Yes.
Do you let it flower, or do you clip those flowers off? It seems like I've read that you sometimes will take the flowers off. Or
I don't.
I don't.
Again, you know what I was saying earlier, if you've got a plant that is flowering, well, one thing it means is that it's a mature plant and that it's ready to start producing whatever it's supposed to produce. If it's a tomato or a pepper or a squash, you know. So, to my mind, I've never taken them off.
follow up with that, I've seen some videos that they talk about a lot of the plants you buy from nurseries are clones or clippings or whatever, especially tomato plants, and that's why a lot of them flower, and that the clippings might not have a really good root system. Do you have anything to say about that, or what?
Okay, well, that's a point. That's a good point. There aren't really that many places that tell you that you can take a cutting of a tomato and root it easily. 10 days in water. Okay? This one just happens to have forked, which is, you know, sort of an aberration for a tomato. So one of these could be cut off, it could be rooted, and you grow yourself another plant. I worked at a greenhouse years and years ago back in Ohio, and of course they grew all their own plants. And back in Ohio, the little pot packs that they grew the plants in, there was like a dozen, and what we've got 6 in that space, or even less space. And so consequently, they don't last too long in those little bitty root balls. And if we were coming along in, say, early May, and it rained all week, which it oftentimes does in Ohio, those plants would all of a sudden be too big and overgrown, and nobody bought them. But next week, we're going to have twice as many people show up. The ones that were going to come last week are going to come. So we just go on, cut them all off, and root them. And then repot them. And, you know, 2 weeks later, you got a whole other set of tomato plants. And so you essentially saved them. Plus, you still have the bottom of those that re-sprout, and you get some of those too. So, but there aren't many places that tell you that you can root a tomato plant, how easy it is. So, in a survival situation, take this for example. If you grew a hybrid tomato, which one of these is a hybrid tomato?
The green one.
Okay, this is one.
Yeah, sweet 100.
Sweet 100. That's a Sweet 100. This is a Cherokee Purple, so that's an heirloom.
Heirloom.
This is a Brandywine. You can always tell Brandywines because they have the potato leaf. This is an Ace tomato. I specifically wanted to talk about this a little bit. This is a hybrid Ace tomato. Okay? There are heirloom Ace tomatoes. Ace 55 is the heirloom. Okay? This is a hybrid. What else do we have here? Big Boy, another hybrid. I brought this one along to show a little bit of iron chlorosis. Okay. That's a red cherry. You can tell by the leaves, they're a little different. Where was I at? Oh, so you can take cuttings of any of these, right? Doesn't matter if it's a hybrid or it's a heirloom. You can make more. So, if you're stuck in a survival situation where I need more tomato plants, right away at least it doesn't matter whether they're hybrids or heirlooms. You can make more of them. Asexually. Asexual propagation. It's when you come to the seeds that you now have to be concerned about whether you have heirlooms or not. And whether they're, and by the way, there's, depending on just what you read, there's a couple of different definitions of what heirloom is. Now, 50 years is one of them. The other one is whether it's been handed down for generation to generation. If it's 50 years, there's 50-year-old tomatoes that are hybrids. Plenty of them, right? You know, I mean, 50 years isn't that far back anymore. We remember 50 years ago.
Some of it.
I was grown by then.
It was the 60s, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Bad George.
Yeah, I bet you.
Okay. Now, oh, I brought something else here, just for the heck of it. Chris was going to talk about composting, but he talked about compost, which is fine, primarily anyhow. I've made a mess, sorry. Well, there's my label. This is a worm bin. Worm composting, vermiculture. You know, back at the beginning, we were talking about what your family would eat. My wife has always said she would eat worms before lettuce. So we're growing her some worms.
Fry 'em or
Right?
pan cure 'em?
She said that many times.
Just not that hungry, huh?
Not yet, so.
I've been waiting all night to do that. No, I almost forgot. Anyhow. Okay, we've got a couple minutes. I want to talk just a little bit about seed saving. Because it's really a big topic. And it sounds simple, and it is, but it isn't. Talked about the squash issue. Okay. And it's not just squash, it's squash, gourds, pumpkins. They'll
Cucurbits.
all cross. Okay. The bees can get busy and go from one to the other, and just don't bother saving the seed if you're growing them anywhere close to each other at all. And it's better to just do one, and your friend 2 blocks away does another one. Okay? And hopefully nobody in between has a whole bunch of other stuff too. So that's a big issue when it comes to those plants. Now, tomatoes, we got to tomatoes because everybody grows a tomato. And you don't have that problem with tomatoes. They don't cross very easily. They have complete flowers. They actually pollinate themselves before the flowers open. Hey,
Dead on.
hey, I did get it right. Okay. Um, So what you want to do if you got tomato plants is, especially when they're small like this, is about once a day you want to come over and do that. And you just spread that pollen inside that flower and pollinated it. And you get tomatoes a little sooner. And the wind will do it too. Yeah. I mean, I had my greenhouse open today and they're going. But that also strengthens the stems, that movement. So it's not a bad thing to have a little wind. You just don't want to break them. But then you can root them, so. You know,
Don't come back.
Okay, so what are the easiest seeds to save?
Potatoes.
They're the, how about, yeah, the plants that you eat the seeds, right? Beans, corn, all those things. So basically all you do is you collect them. I think you could go to Safeway and buy a bag of bean seeds and plant them and they would grow. As far as I know, there's no treatment on beans. Potatoes are different. You know, you want to buy seed potatoes. Chris has seed potatoes for sale. I saw them the other day. The grocery stores, the suppliers to the grocery store, somewhere along the chain, those potatoes are treated so they won't sprout. Right? They're chemical sprayed on them. They won't sprout. Seed potatoes don't get that chemical, right? So they're going to sprout much more quickly. Oh, well, and you know, you can save seeds of lots of other things besides vegetables too. You can save tree seeds, you can save herbs, you can, flowers, you name it, you know, they're all available there to collect. Okay, so now I just want to list a whole bunch of topics that I thought of that we should talk about sometime, but not tonight. Okay? Because we've barely scratched the surface. You know, this was gardening 101 the first week. So anyhow, here's what I wrote down. Organic gardening, permaculture, hydroponics, aquaponics, I'm sorry, straw bale gardening, lasagna gardening. I don't know how many people have heard of lasagna gardening? Okay, it works pretty well, actually. Square foot gardening, Chris mentioned it earlier. We tried to get people to do that at the community gardens. We gave them a 4x4 square and we divided it off and then they planted rows.
Albeit very short.
Short rows, yes. Whole bunch of them. Vertical gardening, doing plants and pots on a wall. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do that. And then seed saving. Seed saving, we could probably spend a whole evening just talking about that. So, okay, we have 3 minutes. Any questions?
At the beginning, you mentioned the powdery mildew on squash.
Yes.
Well, how do you get rid of it?
Change pH.
Oh,
You spray it with a little vinegar, some baking soda water. I mean, it doesn't take much and it goes away.
What causes that? Is that
Sulfur.
too much alkaline in the soil? What is that?
You know what, Chris, do you know?
It's a fungal, it's a fungus,
It's a fungus.
but by changing the pH, you can take something even like sulfur and put it, lime sulfur sprays used to be old, remedies for that, and spray those leaves with a sulfur base. With the acidity, it kills the fungus.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very specific for the pH that it wants. Yes,
You mentioned iron deficiency.
yes.
Can I just take some nails that I pulled out of my walls and let them decompose around the plants?
Yeah, but it's very, very, very slow.
Not borrowing the rototiller.
Okay, I'll tell you one really quick story. I'll try and make it quick. My parents moved to Sun City West, down in Phoenix. Okay. I remember my dad saying, when he talked to me on the phone, I was still back in Ohio, and he said, I think there's a problem with the soil here. He said when the nursery came to plant the trees, the first thing they did was get out a jackhammer. Caliche soil, hard as a rock. Very alkaline, very tightly packed. It will not let water get through. Okay, so you plant these citrus trees in there, and you got this nice big hole, and you put in compost, and you do a good job, and you may as well put it in a clay pot, a big clay pot, right? Those roots are never going to get out of there. So the remedy, he was told from the nursery, was ironite. Okay, it's got iron. Iron will take care of the iron chlorosis, just as I mentioned before. The problem with ironite is there's not enough sulfur in it.
It's a ferric ion too,
Yeah.
single
And
ferric ion.
so it sits there. So for like 5 years, my dad dumped ironite on these trees, year after year, and it just got more yellow. I went out with a 20-pound bag of sulfur, spread it on 6 trees. Now they had basins that were this big, so they were pretty good size. Put that on there. I went away. About 10 days later, he calls me back, and he says, "My trees are so dark green, they're almost black." I said, "Well, it just released all that iron because now we've acidified the soil, so it could do that." That's true. Does that make sense?
That's absolutely makes perfect sense. You don't,
Well, the gentleman that asked the question.
and
So-
those nails are in a ferric state, so that soil can tie up a ferric ion really quick.
Okay.
Don't want to get real technical. A chelated ion is multiple ferric ions, and the soil can't tie it up. Therefore, the plant can pick it up and utilize it readily.
And again, this product that I mentioned before,
Has the combo.
iron with sulfuric acid, what it is. And so it provides the acidity that's needed. The sulfuric acid, it's, I dumped sulfur on it, turned into sulfuric acid when it was, when it got wet, right?
Down.
So, anyhow. Okay, real quick here. Back to fertilizers. So I mentioned nitrogen for growth. Miracle-Gro does that real well because it's higher in nitrogen than it is in phosphate. If you got flowers or tomatoes or whatever, this one. This is the highest amount of phosphate you can find in the. What is it? It's called Super Bloom. It's now owned by Scotts. Didn't used to be, but it is now. Scotts owns practically everything these days. It's 1255.6. And it works.
We have one that's at 1154.
You got another one that's similar.
Same company, Fertilome, has the same deal.
They got one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this used to be Greenlight.
That's exactly correct. They bought the company for another patent.
Okay, I just wanted to show those off. And again, if we're thinking survival gardening, if it was me, I would go out and I would buy a 20-pound bag of bone meal from Chris. I would buy a 20-pound bag of blood meal from Chris. Then I would go to Starbucks and get 3 coffee grounds. Okay? They give this away. You don't even have to buy a cup of coffee. They just, walk in and grab one.
Acid.
So I'll tell you one other thing. Oh, yes, ma'am.
hear so much about Epsom salts in gardens. I know you said salts are not good. Epsom salts, I assume, are in the salts category or not?
Magnesium,
It's, yeah, it's
just
providing
a
the
trace.
magnesium. to
highly
the
overplayed.
plants. And I'm not sure it does all that.
Yeah, it's highly overplayed, but it's magnesium. Most of these water solubles will have magnesium in there.
But it's a salt, so.
When I think back of all the crap I learned in high school,
There's a song about that.
so whether I live in Cholo or St. John or Springerville, can you all mention a few places where lay people can get more education than we got in the 90 minutes now? Enhanced, you've given us great information. Can you mention where we can enhance this education?
Well,
we're
what I
getting?
had suggested to Chip here last week, after our meeting, was that we put on some workshops.
Amen.
And pick one of these topics that I mentioned, or that people are really interested in, and really go into depth into some of it.
Well said.
We certainly can do that.
Let's officially close, because some people have commitments, and then we can stay around as long as anybody wants to ask questions or whatever. And so we will end that. Let's give a great.
And for those of you that don't know, our website is rvconcernedcitizens.com, and Chip will have all this stuff